Okay, so I'm gonna try to do a lot less talking during this talk because I'm going to show you a lot of video clips. So, as Rob mentioned, let's see if this thing's going to work. Oh, wait a minute. We got to do a switch over here. Give me one sec. Okay, I'm going to have to use my, let's see here. Okay. One sec as I switch over. Okay. So now this should work. I hope. If not, I'm going to be running it from up here. Okay, I'm going to run it from here. All right.
Watch out for your elbow.
Yep. Thanks. Okay, so Real Science Radio, you can get to our website at rsr.org. And we've been on the air for almost 20 years now. We've interviewed quite a few famous, evolutionists. You can go to this page if you want to listen to audio, if you want to get see all the content. We have tons of stuff at rsr.org. Bob Inyart did a great job. Bob Inyart did a great job of information you need to know about, like dinosaurs. Go to rsr.org/dino and you'll get all kinds of information. rsr.org/whales. He's done a fantastic job with that, and we get a lot of feedback from people that it's their favorite resource. We've heard that from quite a few people. Okay, so we've also for some time have been on a podcast. My son told me one time he was a guest host for Real Science Radio, and he says on the first podcast host he doesn't know what a podcast is. But I kind of think I do now, so you can listen to us also on Spotify, iTunes, and outlets like that. Okay, so last year, as Rob mentioned in the bio, we ended up adding YouTube presence to our radio show, and the executive producer, Dominic Inyart, he's like, there's orders of magnitude of people you'll reach because YouTube is so popular. You're going to reach the younger generation. And so I told Dom at the time, I've got the perfect face for radio, what are you asking me to do? But I took him up on it, and so Doug and I decided we got to switch and do both audio. We're still going to be on the radio all the time. But we also have a YouTube presence now, and we recommend it if you're going to watch a show. If you're going to listen or watch, it's better to watch because we try to provide a lot of graphics, a lot more, more visual aids. And I'm a visual person, and I know that I prefer video over audio, even though I do listen to audio. So just know that if you're listening to the radio program, you can always go listen to the same show, but watch a lot more visual tools and effects.
And where do we see that?
That's it, and I'll provide links, but it's at youtube.com, and at Real Science Radio is where you can go to the YouTube. And I have, for those of you who know how to use a QR code, I'll have QR codes up here. Use the QR code, go to the website, and I've got it also out on the back table, and subscribe to the channel. So again, I'm going to try to do a lot less talking than normal. I'm just going to show you my favorite clips now. I'm also leaving out a lot of stuff. This isn't a commentary on, there's certain videos there's so much that we've done. I mean, we do a 45-minute show typically each week. So there's only so much I can fit in what's going to be about 50 minutes worth of video. So let's start with this. This was our first man on the street interview. First time ever. Ryan and I go to Cherry Creek Mall, don't know what we're doing. If you watch that whole video, you get to see bloopers that we just leave in there. My thumb is on the camera. Ryan's interviewing people like this. He's the mic and goes, yeah, so what do you think about dinosaur soft tissue? And the other person's here, and I'm like, Ryan, you got to put the mic in their face. Oh, yeah. So you see a lot of that. So this is a really interesting person we're going to show, or a family. They're, I believe, Native American descent. And we were asking at this particular man in the street interviews, we first started off, do you believe in a flat earth? The very first guy we asked said yes. We were setting that up for a future show on the flat earth. So let's watch this interview real quick.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So my first question is, do you guys think the Earth is flat or round?
It's round as a pancake.
Flat as a pancake? Round. So a little rivalry going on here.
I kind of think both. Something
Yeah.
say it's flat and some say it's round. So
Do I need to turn
Okay,
it up?
well, I guess if it say it is flat, well, why do you think it would be the case? Like, why would that make sense to you?
It just feels flat, but it's more or less round. You know, the circumference is 25,000 miles in diameter. So, in order to experience the curvature, you have to do like 26 miles out. Then you don't feel it, but it starts to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So you sound like you're more in the round camp after all.
Yeah.
But, all right, so the next question is, how about long ago do you think the dinosaurs went extinct?
66 million years ago, or so they say.
Concurrence from
From history, and I like history, so they say when the asteroid the size of Mount Everest hit off the Yucatan Peninsula, the Chicxulub crater, that made the dinosaurs go extinct.
Yeah, so I like history a lot too. I guess what would you think if I was to tell you that they found in some like fossil deposits soft tissue and even DNA inside of dinosaur bones? Would that change your mind, or at least open up your different possibility?
There are certain things that you don't know, but there are certain things that they tell you that they want you to believe, you know. So, you know, I'm up for, you know, all of these facts that exist like that, with the soft tissue and all of that in their bones. You know, that's kind of cool though. That's astonishing if that is around, you know. You know, if they found evidence of that, of DNA and things like that, yeah.
It really is astonishing. It really is astonishing.
So that's why we got to get out there. A lot of people don't know about this. Here's a guy who says, that's astonishing. And what we're doing here at Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship and what we do at Real Science Radio, we're trying to get this kind of information out because it's so fundamental to the Bible. We all know that. It's a foundation. And the world attacks the Bible more than anything by going with millions of years in evolution. So I thought this was and we have so many other great clips. You got to go check out that show. There's super interesting stuff. Just check it out. It's great. So, okay, this next show we did a couple of shows with Daniel Hedrick on artificial intelligence. Those are both really good shows. I'm going to play a really brief clip, and this is an interesting take on a kidnapping scam from AI. Just to wrap up, so on the AI kidnapping scam, so based on everything you said, they were able to manipulate AI to trick some parents into.
Yeah, what they did is they got a voice of, they got a capture of her voice. And believe it or not, it's less than 5 seconds. It's not like you have to read a script. You know, if you remember the old days, there was this thing called Dragon Dictate. In fact, I got Bob multiple copies of it free. And the thing is, what you had to do is you had to read like 3 or 4 long paragraphs for it to recognize your voice. Well, today, now it only needs like a 2 to 5 second clip of your voice. Then you create a script, and that's exactly what they did. They created a script, they replayed the voice, they had the call, and the daughter basically was crying out, if they don't send money right now, they're gonna kill me, right? Wow. And they believed it because it was her voice. Here's a perfect way to end the show, perhaps. It's the most important thing I can tell you today about this, okay? I mean, 100% I'm dead serious. If we know that this is happening, then I suggest to you and your family and to your closest friends is that you create a code word. And the most important thing you can do when you create a code word is go out into the middle of the forest with nothing. Like, you may as well go out there with, nothing but your shorts on, okay? Yeah. And my point is that when you communicate to your family, we have this code word. So if anything like this ever happens again, you would say, oh, really? Is that true? And you're waiting for that code word to come out, Right. And if you don't hear the code word, then you go, oh, then this is probably a deep fake. I mean, this is just an idea to protect you, and it's the only one I could think of. And I hope it does help your viewers.
There's a reason I'm chuckling there, but you have to watch the rest of the video because there's a story about a code word with my family that's outright hilarious. But there's only so much time here, so. Okay, so a lot of people here hopefully know who Dr. James Tour is. We have the privilege of being able to interview arguably, definitely one of the top scientists in the world. I mean, R&D magazine, he was Scientist of the Year in 2014. This guy does a lot of amazing work. And it was awesome to get to interview him. And so we interviewed him on his debate that he had at Harvard. So if you want to, definitely, it's another show I'd encourage you to watch. There's some inside baseball, for example, them trying to cancel the debate. They realized who they were up against and whatnot. So I'm going to play you a quick short that we played during this show. A short, by the way, is a YouTube video that has to be a minute or less. And as many people know, this society, the attention span is, you know, you're lucky if a minute is enough of an attention span. And I'll talk a little bit more about shorts later and how Real Science Radio is trying to do more, some more of those to reach the younger generation. Well, let's go ahead and watch this clip with Dr. James Tour. And again, it starts with a short that his team put together.
To take down all the content on my YouTube channel where I've critiqued Origin of Life on one condition. The condition is this: I am going to name 10 key researchers that have published key papers in the area of Origin of Life, and I'm going to give all 10 of you a chance to answer 5 essential questions that need to be answered for Origin of Life to be solved. What are these 5 questions? Well, they're the same 5 questions that I put up on a recent debate that some YouTubers have said have already been solved. Show me the prebiotic chemistry that would do this coupling.
This scheme is what James wanted me to write on the board.
If their answer is good, take their answer. I'd like to see you, as a researcher in the Origin of Life community, take their answer and present that as a solution. All 5 have to be answered to have a model for the origin of life. You just answer one, and I'll take down all my content.
That's a pretty bold statement, Dr. Tour. How's it been going since then?
Well, nobody came out with any answers to it. None. Zero. Nothing. Nobody had any answers, and I knew nobody had any answers. You think that I'm going to put up something that has an answer, but it just goes to show that, number one, the things that YouTubers say are all solved. None of them are solved. The very papers that they cited did not solve it, and that's why the authors of those papers could not use their own work to solve it. Nobody knows how to make any of the polymeric structures, whether it be the polypeptides, the polynucleotides, or the polysaccharides. These are the 3 polymeric classes of compounds that construct us. Nobody knows how those could be made.
All right, so during this show, Doug's feed actually dropped, and so I interviewed Dr. Tour the rest of the time. And you got to watch the second show with him because he talks about this research they're doing for a cure for cancer, or a really effective treatment for cancers like pancreatic cancers, because it's able to, it's like using sound and whatnot to reach these hard to access cancers. They're showing a lot of success, but of course it's going to take a long time for that to be released. But we talked about that in the second show, and I wasn't going to show you a clip on that. So, as I mentioned with the Man on the Street interviews, we were setting up because we wanted to talk about the flat earth, because the flat earth has increased recently with unfortunately a lot of Christians are pushing it. So we think it's important to combat this. This next Friday, Will Duffy's going to be on Real Science Radio, and he's been running this charge to do this, the final experiment that involves Antarctica as a really, hopefully the final proof to get these people that realize, hey, you're barking up the wrong tree, but we'll see how that goes. But here's a brief clip from this particular show. We had Pete Fisk was our guest. He's very well versed in the flat earth arguments. And just wanted to include this clip. And you'll notice the flat earther, first of all, Doug had a great observation. He picked up that the guy's got a pot leaf on his, on his hat. But it's, we catch him pretty much saying almost nothing's going to convince him, but by the way he reacts to a question by Will Duffy. Flip. Will tries to get them to admit the globe version of Australia is way closer to the truth. So let's listen to Jaren's reaction, and particularly how he starts, his very opening reaction. It's interesting.
I would be content if you and Jaren would admit right now that the globe shape of Australia must be way closer to the truth than the Gleason map because of these flights.
No, I'll never say.
But if you want us to draw the Earth for you, to draw the map for you, then you just need to get us the source code for GPS and explain to me why it's hidden by the United States government. It's just a GPS space. It just tells you where you're at. But you get this: if it is changing things and telling people to adjust for the globe, then we would not know that, and they would hide the GPS source code, which is exactly what happens. So give me that source code, and I'll be able to tell you all the transformations that they've made from the real Earth to the globe Earth.
Wow. So
Okay.
I was paying attention, Fred, and Jaron has to stop himself from basically saying, "I'll never believe that. Nothing will ever convince me." So his mind is obviously already made up. Can you play that again?
Okay, I'll play the very start. Yes, exactly what he catches himself.
No, I'll never say.
I'll never admit it, no matter what.
So that thing I was circling was their maps version of Australia. And also his claims about, show me the source code for GPS. I'm actually honored to have one of my former co-workers with me, Ralph Kwan. He's a PhD from Colorado in astro aeronautics. I always get that wrong. We worked together on GPS. So Ralph, are we in on the flat Earth conspiracy? So we'd have to be in on it. So he's basically insulting me too with the claims he made. So anyways, that was a real fun show. And again, next week we're gonna have Will Duffy on again for an update on The Final Experiment is what he's titled it. Okay. So this next clip I'm gonna show is we had Dr. Dan Biddle on, great guy. He produced this fantastic movie called Ark in the Darkness. And there were some on our, at least one person on our production team for Real Science Radio that didn't want to interview him because we don't agree with the flood portion of the film, but it was only 5 minutes where they pushed something called catastrophic plate tectonics. But I talked to Dan Biddle, and we didn't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater because there's so much great content in that film. But Dr. Biddle did agree to let us in the interview. Towards the end of the interview, we were going to talk for about 5 minutes about the hydroplate theory. And the evidence we bring up to him, I want you to catch his reaction. He's startled by something we reveal. We're going to bring that up again later in this presentation tonight. There's some really cool stuff on it. But watch this clip with Dr. Dan Biddle.
Story of this asteroid that NASA reported on, and they had analyzed some samples and concluded it, quote, came from an ancient ocean world because of material that they found on it that included serpentinites, which, quote, from NASA, are found along mid-oceanic ridges.
Yeah.
So, Doug, you lampooned on that. Remember what you said about, you had a Star Wars reference.
Yeah, well, I had said that maybe they thought that the material they found came from Dantooine after Darth Vader destroyed it on Star Wars. But then it turns out that your son Ryan later pointed out that it wasn't Dantooine that Darth Vader destroyed, it was Alderaan. Oh.
Yeah,
so I'm sure we disappointed some Star Wars fans out there. But anyway, here's what the generated AI show notes from our podcast software said. They said, quote, "The destruction of Dantooine by Darth Vader and the Death Star is a topic for scientific debate." That's what's that AI program you use called Chipmonkey or something like that?
Again, that was a great interview with Dr. Biddle. I just showed the part about where we talked about the hydroplate theory, and he was gracious to, and you caught his reaction, right? When we talked about a rock that came from the mid-oceanic ridge. I wonder if he was thinking at that time, maybe we should have listened more to the hydroplate guys and got that into the film. Okay. So next we interviewed Dr. Carl Werner, March 22nd. We had 2 interviews with him. This is the first one. He's done incredible research over the decades, really, on human evolution fraud, the frauds that are being perpetrated in the museums and everything. And he's very clear on what a fraud is. He's not talking about wild imagination like evolutionists have or just wild speculation. He's talking about actually knowing you're willingly lying to trick people into believing something. This is what he's uncovering. Okay, it's not subjective opinions or anything. It's outright fraud, outright lying. The first clip I want to show you is on Nebraska Man. A lot of us know Nebraska Man. They created an ape man from a pig tooth. And okay, you can say they got a wild imagination. Well, it turns out there was several lies involved with that, several shenanigans, and he's the first really to uncover this, and he brought this up on Real Science Radio. I think we were the ones.
Interesting fact of the week, Doug. What mammal can hold its breath?
Sorry, I want to show you one of our interesting facts of the week first. This is one of my favorite ones. So every show, almost every show, we have an interesting fact of the week. It's kind of to lighten the mood or whatever. It's a popular segment, and it gives me the opportunity to buzz my co-host when he gets the answer wrong. Some say that I might be a little too aggressive with the buzzer, enjoying it too much. But anyways, I loved this interesting fact of the week just because of Dr. Carl Werner's reaction, and we often will challenge our guests too to get the answer. Whoops. One sec.
The interesting fact of the week, Doug. What mammal can hold its breath underwater the longest?
Wait.
The longest.
What mammal?
Okay, a mammal. Okay, well that seems really obvious, so I don't want to say the really obvious one because that one's almost always wrong. But it's got to be a whale. I knew it. I knew it. It was too obvious.
Okay, what was the obvious one? Was that the obvious one?
Well, the whale would seem like it would have the biggest capacity, so it seems obvious to me, but then again, maybe we should ask the doctor.
I don't know if I want to buzz my guest.
I would have guessed the seal. I would have guessed the seal. I guess the seal or the sea lion.
That's really good. That's exactly right, the elephant seal.
Wait a second. Now, how could it be that a little tiny seal can hold his breath longer than a big whale? The whale's got to have bigger lungs. Do whales have lungs?
A lot of our interesting facts are like that. You'll enjoy them, okay? So this next clip is on the Nebraska Man fraud. There's more to it. Again, I'm just showing you really brief snippets that hopefully get the idea across. This was a great show with Dr. Werner.
1922, William Jennings Bryan had the audacity to write an op-ed piece for the New York Times. It was a full-page op-ed piece criticizing the theory of human evolution, saying that human evolution turns the Bible into a scrap of paper. But he had the audacity at the end of the article to say, I challenge the president of the American Museum to respond to this. And so now the president of the American Museum, Henry Fairfield Osborne, is really PO'd. He has to respond to this crazy creationist, and he has to work on this. He has to write up an op-ed piece. And so the next week he gives kind of a soft, response, da 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 da, and evolution's true, da 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 da. And amazingly, 6 weeks later, or 4 weeks later, he announces they just found an ape man in Nebraska. Now, what he is announcing is the tooth that was found, 6 years earlier. Now, it gets better than this. And he says the tooth was found just last year. You see, what they did is they pulled a pig tooth off the shelf and they said, William Jennings Bryan, you're an idiot, you're a buffoon. Look, you have an ape man in your own backyard in Nebraska. We just found this ape man. It's the ape man of the Western world. And how could you not look at the evidence? And it kind of did silence.
That's amazing.
It kind of did silence William Jennings Bryan. He said, I don't believe it's an ape man, but I don't have the expertise, and you're the dental experts. And no one knew that this was a fraud job, a hack job, and an anti-Christian job.
So again, there's so much more detail on that show. So again, encourage you to go back and watch that one. It's from March 22nd. The next one, real quickly, it's on, we've all heard of Lucy. Well, Lucy has frauds involved with it, not just wild speculation, but outright lies, and he talks about a couple of them here.
For this next story, we interviewed Dr. Don Johansen in 1997 about Lucy. Johansen, his big story about Lucy was that the knee joint looked like a human knee. He did that on his show Nova. He did that in his book. The knee of Lucy is human, and therefore it walked upright. Got it. So we went to Paris and interviewed his partner at the dig site when Lucy was found. His name is Yves Coppens. It was right before he died, probably of COVID. And we interviewed him. Dr. Coppens, the knee joint of Lucy, which you guys found, was it ape or human? Now, we know already he's going to say human because we've heard this for 15 years. He said, oh, the knee joint of Lucy, it's ape. What?
What? Yeah.
What? Oh, no, it's ape. It's not human-like knee. It's an ape knee. I was like, what? Okay, so that was a fraudulent statement that Dr. Johansen made when he wrote that all analysis of the Lucy knee joint show that it is human-like, therefore walked upright. So that was a fraudulent statement because his partner didn't agree. In fact, Johansen gave lectures saying when he did his own analysis to his students, it showed up in the ape area. So that was the first fraud. Second fraud, he said that Lucy walked upright because in Tanzania, we find this set of footprints in Lake Tole, Tanzania, and they look like human footprints, like two people just walked down the beach. And he said in his book, look, the only fossils that are found at Lake Tole site were Lucy-type fossils, okay? So what animal could have made the footprints? It had to be Lucy because there was no other animals there besides the Lucy kind. It kind of makes sense. It's a hollow argument, but I get where he's going. So Debbie and I jumped in a plane, flew to Tanzania, met with the former national director of the Tanzanian Museum, and we said we'd like to photograph all the fossils that were found at Lake Tole, expecting them all to be Lucy types. Okay, they pull out the first one, LH1, Lake Tole hominid 1. It's a Lucy tooth. Lake Tole fossil 2, it's a Lucy jaw. Lake Tole fossil 3, it's a Lucy bone. Lake Tole fossil 4, it goes on and on and on. Okay, when they got to the 18th fossil, and that was Lake Tole fossil 18, LH18, I about fell off my seat. You know what he brought out? Lake Tole fossil 18 is a human skull. They found a human skull at Lake Tole, and Johansen kept this a secret and told a fraudulent lie. Now, he would have known this because he did a dig after Leakey, and he knew the catalog up to that point, and he had to add fossils after that fossil. So that was a fraud.
So who here knew about that? I mean, I knew about the Lake Tole footprints, but he uncovered this additional fraud where they actually have a human skull among those fossils. Who knows about that? That's a fraud to hide that from people because it totally destroys their narrative. Okay, so show we had in April, we did a couple with Kevin Lee. Now Kevin Lee, he's a former nuclear engineer turned pastor, really bright guy, and one of the foremost experts on the hydroplate theory. He communicates it really well. And so, and he also engages a lot of the secular scientists. He'll call them on the phone, he'll email them. A lot of the scientists that are involved with these discoveries we're finding out in space. So I want to go ahead and play a couple of clips from from Kevin Lee. He's an honorary doctor, I told him that, Real Science Radio honorary doctor.
Is that the life and water planet Earth ejected material into space to become comets and asteroids and to be dangerous to the future Earth. And God in his word said, I judged the earth with a flood back in the days of Noah. I'm going to be judging the earth with fire in the last days. And the book of Revelation tells us some of that fire is objects falling from space and crashing into earth, and some things could crash into earth enough to really break the crust up and cause major volcanic activity. And the Bible says that there is going to be a time where there's enough of an impact that every place on the earth is going to have a global earthquake, a runaway global earthquake. And so asteroids and comets are not good. They were not part of the creation. They are part of the judgment of Noah when it was sent up into space. You know, the debris of asteroids and comets was sent up to space with organic material from Earth that is being discovered now with these space probes.
And so, Pastor Lee, I just want to follow up on that. So we're not even going to entertain the silly, ridiculous idea that all this mineral and organic material evidence that we're finding in space might indicate that life came to us from space. We're not even going to entertain that. That's the secular position. It's so silly as to be just eliminated outright, offhand. None of that. But as far as, now I never took an orbital physics class, but I know you did. Is it logical to assume that if this material came from the Earth, eventually at least some of it is going to come back?
Yes, because if it was all jettisoned from the Earth, then, and again, this debris can go out and spin out into the asteroid belt, but if something comes by, perturbs the orbit of that asteroid, crashes into an asteroid, all of a sudden its orbit changes. And all those asteroids in the asteroid belt are in the orbital plane of our solar system. And Apophis is an asteroid that is very non-inclined. It's right in the orbital plane of the Earth and is very close to the Earth's orbit quite frequently. And in 2029, it's going to be, by their estimates, and they've done a very good job of trying to nail it down, and they're saying at this point, it's going to miss us by 20,000 miles.
Wow, that's close in space.
Yeah, so about 20,000 miles. And so the Earth is going around the sun, and right after the Earth leaves a spot in its orbital path, 20,000 miles behind Earth, the Apophis asteroid is going to go behind it. Now, could sometime another orbital body give a little nudge to Apophis to cause it to then hit the Earth? That's the big question. They're looking at it very carefully. They want to make sure that that asteroid misses us.
So I thought, first of all, it was a really great insight that God's judgment, the flood of Noah, that same material could very well be the judgment to come. I never really put that together. Maybe some of you smarter guys out here did. I thought that was a great insight by Kevin Lee. So the next clip, this is it's a pretty strong rebuke that Kevin Lee does have of the catastrophic plate folks. So I just kind of warn you of that. And so he comments on that, and then he also comments on Bennu that we mentioned earlier, that asteroid. That's pretty interesting. So let's watch this clip.
Rock from Bennu, and it's serpentinite, and it comes from the mid-oceanic ridge. Game over?
Yeah, well, it should have been game over way before that. And you know that your theory is messed up when you have to invent verses in the Bible or statements in the Bible that aren't true, which twice in that Ark in the Darkness movie, you have the advocates of catastrophic plate tectonic series saying that the Bible says that the volcanoes started the flood. And that is not true. It's a false statement. So when you know you're having to mess with Scripture to support your view, then it would be truly better, especially if you fear God, to change your theory instead of trying to change God's Word. And when the Bible says that the fountains of the great deep burst up and it rained 40 days and 40 nights, wouldn't it be better to just have your paradigm be that the fountains of the great deep burst up of water and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights? Lava does not create global rainfall. And Dr. Baumgartner knows that. He's been challenged about that many times in the past. You cannot have And they also said that lava set up great bursts of water up into space. Lava does not do that. We have many volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor. They do not create fountains of water jettisoning up into the atmosphere, let alone space. And the Bennu asteroid, when the OSIRIS-REx probe reached Bennu in 2018, it started doing spectral analysis, not going and collecting the material yet, but analyzing it. And the article, this is an article in December 11, 2018, by Christopher Crockett from skyandtelescope.com. And the title is OSIRIS-REx finds hints of past water on asteroid Bennu. So, and what it was evidence of liquid water. So, as we discussed earlier, the people that think that God created comets and asteroids in space as part of the creation week, then they have to also say, well, when he created comets and asteroids with water on them, he made it liquid water. You know, the God made it liquid water in the near absolute zero temperature of space on these rocks, because that's what they're finding. They're finding minerals, clay. They found clay. Now, boy, I can go to the store and buy clay here on Earth. And then they find it in space. And clay only forms in the presence of liquid water. So the paradigm needs to change by the catastrophic plate tectonic people. They need to stop being monkey to man, their version of the monkey to man narrative, because it's not true. And realize that the Earth had a fountain that was so strong, the windows of heaven had to open for the fountains to go up, and some of that water went up into space and came straight back down through the still open windows of heaven to bury the frozen mammoths in super cold ice and water dump. The evidence is all over the world that it was water that was jettisoned that created a 40-day fountain of water globally. And that's the only way you can do it. You can't do it with steam. And here's what it says, that says Bennu itself is too small to have ever hosted liquid water. However, researchers suspect that the roughly 500-meter wide space rock is actually a chunk of a much larger asteroid knocked off long ago. Now, so what they're saying is Bennu cannot ever have had liquid water or water on it. It's too small of a mass. So what it must have come from is a bigger asteroid, let's call it Earth.
Okay, so that whole presentation is fantastic. Let's call it Earth. So this next clip I'm going to show you, we haven't shown this on Real Science Radio yet. It's from a secular reporter. She's very popular on YouTube. And one of our listeners sent us this, and this is going to blow you away. I showed this to Dominic Inyart in one of our production meetings, and he's like, wow, I'm going to do my own video on this. This is so cool. Just watch this. For those of you who are familiar with the hydroplate theory, there's a crack around the globe where the fountains of the Great Deep burst forth through that crack, created the mid-oceanic ridge, and sent a lot of material up into space. That's what we believe from the hydroplate theory. We have tons of evidence for it. Just watch this secular account. This is so cool. This is a short that she put out on YouTube.
Insane space news in a really long time. This asteroid called Bennu is 63 million kilometers away. That's 160 times farther than the moon is. Over the last few years, this spacecraft called OSIRIS-REx traveled all the way there, touched its surface, grabbed a sample, and brought it all the way back to Earth. And what they found in that sample is insane. It's rich in carbon, nitrogen, and organic compounds, all of which are essential to life as we know it, but we've seen that before. The asteroid is also covered in a mineral called serpentine, which looks like this. And these samples look just like the type of rock that we find here in mid-ocean ridges. This is where the stuff from the mantle of the Earth comes up and touches the water. It's underwater. Scientists think that this asteroid could be a chunk of an ancient small ocean world. This could be a piece of an old watery planet that's been traveling through space for billions of years, and we just took a sample of it.
Let's call that Earth. All she needs to do is fix that globe and make it Earth, and then fix the fountains of the Great Deep actually happening above, on the land surface. So, and otherwise, I mean, Walt Brown's talked about this for years, and here's, these people work for Walt Brown and they don't know it. They support the hydroplate theory. We commented on our video, and we'll see if, and I'm trying to get her to come on Real Science Radio. We'll see if we can get that to happen. Okay, so we went to, Doug and I went to a homeschool conference in Dallas, actually Fort Worth, and there just happened to be an art show right next door, right next to the conference. And so we came up with a set of questions to ask these people, and then compare and contrast it to the homeschool kids, and even a police officer at the homeschool conference. And it was, really stark, the different views, the different ways that your worldview answers these questions. There's a lot of content. This particular guy, this was about a 10 to 15 minute exchange. It's our most watched video right now. We have 62,000 views on this video. I'm not going to show a clip from that, so I'm encouraging you, if you want to see it. It was super interesting, and there's so many other interesting people. But probably our favorite, from what we've heard from people who commented, was that the next day we went out, a couple days later, we ran into some more people. And this was an interesting group, and I'm going to play for you this clip and just realize we're asking these same questions to everybody, including homeschoolers, and so just to get an idea of the different responses you get. But we're only going to show you this clip. We encourage you to watch the Real Science Radio episode on this to see the homeschoolers' response and the other art goers.
Question number 1, what scares you most about artificial intelligence?
It's going to take my job.
It's going to take your job. You want to answer that?
Same.
Okay, question 2, should men be allowed to get abortions?
What do you mean? Explain that.
Yeah. Should men be allowed to get abortions? That's the question.
Yes, everybody should.
Everybody should? How can a man get an abortion?
No idea, but if that's what he wants to do it.
Can he get pregnant?
Some men, yeah.
All right, are you sure about that? I don't think that's physically possible.
Well, your gender and how they identify, it's different.
Okay, well, here's the next question for you. How long ago did dinosaurs die out?
I have no idea.
Take a guess?
I have no idea.
All right, well, I want to tell you that scientists have found soft tissue in dinosaurs, indicating that they're a lot younger than probably we assume. Some people say that they died out 4 billion years ago, but DNA can only really last a few thousand years. So dinosaurs are probably a lot younger than maybe you thought.
Cool.
Yeah, some cool stuff to look into. All right, here's a multiple choice question for y'all. Big Bang, God, or the aliens?
Big Bang and God.
Big Bang and God, interesting. Big Bang and God for you too? All right, how can you kind of explain out what your thought process is there?
I don't know how God works, but maybe he worked through the Big Bang. Like, I can't explain how he works. So.
Okay, yeah, well, we believe that the account in Genesis, when God creates the world, the universe in 6 literal days, we believe that's true, and we believe science can back up those claims. And that's what our show here is about. It's called Real Science Radio. We're based in Denver, and we talk about how the science actually works to help prove the Bible and prove that God exists, and that we have a loving creator who he came, we're all sinners, we're all fallen, we're living in a broken world, but he came, he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins so we can all be redeemed and live with him again forever in a perfect state. And all you need to do is just put your trust in Jesus Christ. So, yeah, all right, great. So last question then for y'all. Do you think that anyone can prove that God exists?
No, I think it's up to each individual person in their faith.
Yeah. Faith. All right, yeah, so we do believe that God is above nature, so, we can't really prove him with, like, a scientific experiment or anything, but we do believe that God's invisible attributes are clearly seen. We think he put his thumbprint in all of creation, and, you said, can men get pregnant? I was asking my question. We believe that God made men and women very differently, but, together. One man and one woman can come together and create their own family, and we believe that God has a design for that, and we can't change that. We're, men and women are different, but we're all very unique. We're all very special, and he loves us.
You believe in science, right?
Oh yeah, I believe in science.
So, we're all female when we're first created.
Well, we're not really all female. We're just kind of, it's really neither. And it's actually, yeah, I'm sure. And it's actually, at conception is when your genes are determined to become male.
Then how do some people become both?
You can't. They're confused.
Born with both.
Oh, you mean the intersex? Yeah, so that's genetic deformity, where something went wrong in the genetics and it's created a problem.
Or they just didn't go all the way through the process of becoming one or the
Wait, I have one more question before we close. So you said you believed in a loving creator.
Yes.
Do you believe the loving creator thinks everyone should be able to get an abortion?
Yes.
How is that if he's a loving creator? What about the child being killed? Does he love that child too?
Yes.
But the child is not
talking about
born.
the children in Gaza then?
And then what about the mother? Sure, we can talk about that. What about the mother who ends up being a murderer of her child?
How is she a murderer? It's her body.
The child is not her body.
But the child can't live without her.
Well, neither can my 2-year-old live without her mom.
Yes,
Have you ever experienced the trauma of
Someone has
childbirth?
to take care of her, right?
Right, but she's outside of someone's body.
But she can't live on her own. So
Yes,
that's not a good
physically
argument.
she can.
No, she can't.
Yes, she can.
No.
Okay.
She can't sustain her own life. How's a 2-year-old going to live on her own?
But I'm saying, as a person, a living being, she can still breathe and
She can breathe, but
all of
if
that.
nobody feeds her and nobody takes care of her, what's going to happen to her?
Childbirth is an extremely dangerous process, especially proven for women of color, even more dangerous. Proven, I mean, women can die.
That's why it takes some bravery to have a child.
Yeah, then you have a child then.
I have 3.
I don't need to be lectured by a white man in skinny jeans about what I can do with my body.
I'm not lecturing you, I'm asking you questions.
So Doug did consider no longer buying skinny white jeans. Skinny jeans. So really interesting exchange. Early on she said, how can a man get pregnant? Well, if he identifies it as a man. And then she says, do you believe in science later? I mean, this is amazing what the society's coming to. Can I identify as a 20-year-old? Would you believe that?
No.
No. You wouldn't? Oh, come on. Okay, so a lot of great content from these videos. This is really high up in watch content also. This next one is from Sal Cordova. He's one of the leading researchers for creation. This guy's fantastic. And he's even published papers in several prestigious journals, secular journals. And this guy, he has some really great arguments for creation. And he ended up debating a Satanist called Aaron Ra. He's pretty popular on YouTube. And Sal Cordova got him to admit that there is no common ancestor to proteins, and he was real angry when he did it. He used cuss words, explicitives, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Expletive.
Thank you. So let's watch a clip from Sal Cordova. His shows are always fantastic. You learn so much.
Are radically different. You had carburetors before, now you have fuel injectors, you have all sorts of modifications. But it's even more difficult than that. There's no homology between a car battery and a piston. Okay? There's no homology among the parts. There's no homology among the parts. Because this is a radio audience, you don't have the privilege of seeing some of the graphics that we want to throw up. But you could actually see that the physical parts of life, the machines of life, so you have motor proteins, you have proteins that are like the homohexameric helicase that is like a propeller that runs at 20,000 RPMs, that is able to split the DNA so that it could be do all sorts of things like replication. You have the topoisomerase that is shaped like a pair of scissors. You have a potassium ion channel that actually looks like a nut. You have a nut and bolt. It really looks, if you saw pictures of this, it'd blow your mind. It's like, that looks like that's God-made, and you compare that to man-made. They look very similar. And if you look at the topoisomerase protein, which, by the way, is a target of chemotherapies, we try to disrupt its function because the way your DNA is untangled is the topoisomerase has to cut it, and then untangle it, and then reconnect it. And I'm just like, look, guys, you compare the analogy to the parts of the car. A tire has no homology to a fuel tank. It has no homology to a radiator. There's no homology, Owen-esque homology, to all the parts of the machines of life, like proteins. And I'm like, do you not get it? And so when I ask, well then you can't evolve these from a common ancestor. So where do they come from? It's like, duh, I don't know. So when I ask them that, where does it come from? They keep saying, well, it's no problem for evolution. But when you start probe them hard, and because, like our paper in Oxford University Press specifically talked about the topoisomerase protein. So let me just describe how difficult this is and the problems. And we could go to like the collagen, the zinc finger protein, and this is, this is where I'd say creationists stop arguing the fossil record. You're just going to kill your opposition if you can just get a little more sophisticated. There's a nice video, it's only 2 minutes or so long, available on the Discovery Institute. My co-author on the Oxford paper, Joe DeWeese, is an expert in topoisomerase. He's published in the top journal of the world in science on topoisomerases. Okay, so
you published in the Oxford Journal, right? A secular journal, some of this work.
Right, and because cancer therapies, they use chemotherapies, and we're trying to figure out ways to make the chemotherapy not so deadly, because it kills cancer cells, but it kills good cells. So there's intense research on the topoisomerase protein. So let me describe what a topoisomerase does. If you can disrupt it, you can kill the cell. It's dead. Okay, that's the first thing to know. So this is not going to evolve in gradual steps, because if it's after you're dead. So let me explain why. There are like 4 steps that need to be there to make the topoisomerase work. One, it has to detect the tangle in the DNA. Your DNA, in the process of replication and gene expression or whatever, it gets tangled. If you've ever had tangles of wires and tried to uncoil them and separate them, it's a mess. Now topoisomerase...
Yeah, as you start untangling it like this, and it just gets knotted up eventually, right? I mean,
Right, I mean, I would encourage people to see the videos on topoisomerase, particularly topoisomerase 2. So this is how it solves the problem. When we try to untangle things, it's nice to have a lot of room to be able to pull the cords and stuff. You don't have a lot of room inside the nucleus of the cell if it's a eukaryotic organism. So what it does is it cuts the DNA. So it has to detect the tangle, the knot. It has to cut the DNA. It has to then it makes it easier to untangle, and it has to reconnect. If you have a half-formed topoisomerase and all it does is cut, that's going to be really bad at the genome, okay?
So again, so much great content in this show, and one of his overriding arguments is there's no common ancestor to proteins, and that's where Aaron Ross, he got him to admit that, because there's none, and so it refutes evolution completely. That ends the argument. So at Real Science Radio, we decided to do a short on this. So I'll show you a 1-minute clip that was based off of this interview with Sal Cordova. And again, these are hopefully to reach a younger audience, and even 40 and under. There's so many people with short attention spans, and we plan to do a lot more shorts in the future.
Do you admit that Darwin's tree of life is wrong? No comment. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Your Honor, these are catalogs of genes such as topoisomerase and zinc finger from both NIH and the ENCODE project. You'll find there are no examples of common ancestors to these genes, proving evolution is false. I submit these as creationist exhibits Alpha and Bravo. You snotty little creationist. You and your pretty white suits don't realize that evolution saves lives. Do you admit to saying that proteins do not have a common ancestor? You darn right I did. Your Honor, I move to an immediate Article 38 Omaha to stop teaching the fairy tale of evolution. The atheist has rights.
We have other ones that, again, we're working on, and we want ideas. Please give us ideas for a 1-minute short that you think will reach people, or maybe use a Hollywood movie and take advantage of it, draw people's attention. We've got 3 shorts coming up at some point using Star Wars clips. Okay, so we did Dominic Inyard and I did a show, and this was using stuff I documented on a website called BibleEvidences.com years ago. In fact, this site goes back to 1996. And then I updated it for some years, and then probably not too much lately, but we went ahead and did a couple of shows on it. And this first clip I want to show you is Dominic's interest. It was kind of a funny story about his dad and circumcision, because circumcision, the science of it, there's scientific aspects of it in the Bible.
In the Bible, God uses that as a symbol, which we won't get into on this show, but he uses it as a symbol, and he says that the male child should be circumcised on the 8th day, right? Paul was circumcised on the 8th day, Jesus was, all the people. Why the 8th day?
Well, that's a great question, and I actually have experience with this in a sense that when Ryan was circumcised,
your son?
Yeah, my son Ryan, and who's been on the show. Of course, many people know him when we do Creation Magazine. He's done the Man on the Street interviews. So Ryan, when he was circumcised, and man, I felt so bad for him because he was screaming bloody murder. And I'm in the other room, and the poor kid's yelling. Well, anyways, it turns out, and the doctor told me this. He's the same guy that delivered Ryan. He said, "Oh, did you know that by the 8th day, enough vitamin K builds up, and another thing called prothrombin, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but these
prothrombin.
Yeah, they're the two main blood clotting elements that God designed in our body. So by our 8th day, those have built up. So you can do circumcision and you'll have blood clotting and it'll all work great.
Wow,
well,
it reduces blood clotting.
Exactly. Well, so nowadays you can circumcise before the 8th day, but then they provide you an extra vitamin K.
That's remarkable, which they obviously didn't have back then.
Yeah.
So, a funny story about circumcision, my dad, Bob Enyart, my father and predecessor, he wrote the plot, which is a study on biblical circumcision, and it's a big, thick manuscript. Take you a few weeks to read through. It's a eye-opening book, but it's all about circumcision. And my parents, when they were having one of my siblings, when it was time for the circumcision, the nurse got angry at my dad because she had some against circumcision for whatever reason, but she was getting angry at him, and she was like, "What do you know about circumcision?" He's like, "Well, I wrote a book on it." She picked the wrong guy.
Yeah, I just say that. Sounds like your dad. That's awesome.
Okay, so then the next week we had a second show and continued talking about science evidence in the Bible. So I should play a brief clip from that.
The logic cycle, and we know about this from science, and yet the Bible talked about this cycle back in Job, and so many cool things in Job. So it says, "For he draws up drops of water, which distill as rain from the mist, which the clouds drop down and pour abundantly on."
Can you imagine living in Job's time and figuring out, okay, there's evaporation, and that's how the clouds form, and that's how it rains? Not a chance in a million that they could figure that out. That information is there because God told them. It's the only way they could figure it out.
Yeah, it's so cool. And more, if you go to the website, ocean currents, I always love this one, because scientists, only in the last 100 years or so, they discovered springs of water in the depths of the ocean. And again, we've got citations on this. So perhaps this is what the Bible was referring to when it said, "Have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of its depths?" And that's in Job again. So many cool things in Job.
Yeah, I know the father of modern oceanography, is that the right term? He is a Christian, and he read how the Bible talks about how there's these pathways in the ocean, and he said, "I'm going to find them." God says they're there, I'm going to find them, and thanks to him we have this incredible map of the ocean, which is remarkable. I think it's either in Job or it's in Psalms. It's one of the most remarkable things. It says that God walks through the oceans. Me and my wife, we just got married. We went to the Bahamas and we went snorkeling, and it was wild because the water looks so calm and nice. Bahamas is so blue and warm, and then you get in and it's tossing you around. You're just helpless at the whim of the ocean, and the ocean will you're like a leaf in the wind. There's almost no control. And and that's in calm water. And then think about like there's the North Sea and how scary that ocean is with all its storms. And to think I'm just so easily tossed around by this, but God just walks right on through like it's a kiddie pool.
That's a great point.
And so that is, if you are a skeptic, that is the God you are up against, and you will lose that fight.
Yeah, and if you remember Nemo, I don't know if you saw that movie, a lot of, Nemo, and I don't remember much of it, but there was that part where they catch a ride in the currents of the ocean to go to a different part of the,
Exactly.
like
What a great illustration.
So lots more from those shows on science that we find in the Bible. The Bible we talk about isn't a science book, but whenever it talks about science, it's completely accurate. So those shows were a lot of fun. Brian and I, we do Creation Magazine shows, and I just wanted to show you a quick clip from this one, Creepy Crawlies That Defy Evolution.
This dragonfly, and I'm looking at a picture of this, and it mentions that it had a wingspan up to 28 inches in the fossil record, so that's more than 2 feet. Can you imagine a dragonfly flying around that big with your swatter, a fly swatter, trying to get that thing? That ain't gonna work.
Well, then they call them,
they're gonna fly swatter.
Yeah, they call them griffin flies because I guess even the dragon wasn't a good enough name for it, so they call them griffin flies.
Griffin fly, yep. And we mentioned the millipede. They've got a picture of a reconstructed millipede here. And then another one is these scorpions.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Can you imagine a scorpion that large?
So imagine a 28-inch scorpion coming after you. I'd be like kicking that thing and like, get away from me.
I can't believe how big that thing is. I mean, those things are creepy enough as it is. Some clown in my fraternity pulled a practical joke and put like 5 scorpions in the shower. There was this common shower that had like 5, shower heads. But I can't imagine seeing things this big in there. There's even a sea scorpion, which thank goodness that thing was in the sea, but this thing was like twice the size of an average sized human. I mean, these things are...
They say it was 8 feet long.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So what's interesting about all of these fossils, all of these creatures from before the flood, they're remarkably similar to modern day creatures. They're just a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm. The same structures, same overall proportions, but just much bigger.
Larger, yeah. So, evolution isn't going to be able to explain that.
Yeah, and so that creation article that we went through also mentioned that it's not necessarily due to higher oxygen content. We believe that for years, but there's other factors that just allow these things to grow a lot bigger. So, in that show, there was a really fun segment on the interesting fact of the week, and it had to do with Ryan and bugs. So, if you get a chance to go watch that, you'll get a kick out of it. Okay, this was an interesting show. I was opposed to this generally in the production meeting and was convinced that this is an interesting topic, and I wasn't opposed, the reason I was opposed, I just thought it'd be boring. And I thought Doug did a fantastic job interviewing Henry Smith. I was in Nashville at the time on vacation, and this is about the chronologies, the controversy of Genesis 5 and 11. And, Ed talked about it when he gave his presentation. So Doug went into this as a skeptic and had lots of hard questions, and he left with maybe a 50-50. He thinks this is possible. I'm in the same boat. I'm not totally sold on it. You have to watch the whole video. Henry Smith, who's an expert on this, isn't saying that the Masoretic text is bad. In fact, he still uses it. But there's this one controversy on Genesis 5 and 11, and his claim is basically that this was altered by the rabbis to try to change the dates of when the Messiah would appear, because they were rabidly opposed, obviously, to Christianity. So whether or not you believe it or not, you can watch this show and see if it's compelling to you or not, but I'm just going to play you a brief clip from it where he presents kind of the core of the argument.
By the way, just in case our audience isn't particularly familiar, we're talking about specific 100-year differences. Not 101, not 74, not 63 here and there, but literally 100 years in a number of these beginning ages, am I right? And one difference of precisely 50 years.
Yes.
So this appears to be something systematic that occurred, not just errors or things like that.
No, it's impossible for it to be scribal errors. It's too systematic, it's too widespread. And you got to change multiple numbers. You got to change the remaining years too, especially in Genesis 5, because the math has to add up for the lifespan.
Right.
So if you change a beginning age, then you got to change the remaining years. And those both can't be scribal errors. You got to do all that
So in the pre-flood period, there's a 600-year difference, and in the post-flood, it's 650 in the numbers that we're talking about.
Okay, so 1,250-year overall difference from the creation.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's significant.
And it is. And a young Earth creationist framework certainly is a significant difference, especially in the post-flood period. So now, I was resistant to this because I just was resistant to it because it sounded like a conspiracy theory. And there's a number of people who have written to me and said, I just can't believe that that's the case. I can't believe that God would allow somebody to systematically change the text, that the rabbis did that. I just can't believe that. And there's a part of me that understands that reaction because I had the same reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But it kept persisting in the literature, and as I began to test the theory, I said, okay, if this happened in the 2nd century, is there evidence, first of all, is there historical testimony that points to that as an explanation? And there is. There are a number of ancient authors and medieval authors who pointed to that as the explanation for the differences.
So, super interesting show. It's fun to watch, and it's, see what you think. And he does provide arguments of, the Masoretic text, you don't lose confidence. What about God? Doesn't he preserve his word perfectly? All of those points are addressed in this video. But you'll see that he makes the case that it'd be a lot harder to have the Septuagint be wrong based on both biblical and historical information than the Masoretic text. And there was a motive for the Masoretic text to do that. It doesn't change anything about salvation. And one interesting thing is, Walt Brown's calculation of comets when they left Earth and when they came back, when he tried to calculate the date of the flood, supports Henry Smith's Septuagint date for the flood. So just kind of a curious note. Okay, this is a fun show, and we're kind of getting towards the end. I'm going to go ahead and play you a really quick clip of an interesting fact of the week. Emily Reeves is fantastic. She's from the Discovery Institute. She has her PhD in biochemistry and biophysics from Texas A&M, and has wrote some really great material on how engineering and biology intersect. And so, but I wanted to show you the interesting fact just because it's fun, and we're kind of getting towards the end here.
Good point, Doug. Okay, so here is the interesting fact of the week. Doug, what is the fattiest human organ? The fattiest.
Fattiest. The fattiest. Now, I haven't thought about organs in terms of fat content. So you're catching me a little off guard. I'm going to say the liver.
Nope.
Well, I guess that depends on whose liver you're talking about. Okay, so now, Emily, this is probably right up your alley. Help us out with the interesting fact of the day.
Okay, let me think about this. Fat tissue?
The fattiest organ.
The fat
human organ.
Fat tissue doesn't count.
Yeah, it maybe it does, but that's not, and I never buzz my guests.
Oh.
No, now that's, a biology expert. No, a biology expert answers you with the, how about the fat? I hadn't thought about the fat.
Yeah. Okay, let me think. What else? What is it? Oh, it's the brain. Brain.
No surprise there. No surprise there.
That's exactly right. So the brain. So Doug, I guess you were about 3 feet off, depending on the person.
Yeah.
Proximity between the liver and the brain. But anyways, that was not a bad guess.
Fred, that's the difference between someone who had their internship at a bar/liquor store and someone who had their internship at MIT.
Okay. So really quickly, we put a lot of research into our show on the Bible and alcohol. We have 2 shows on there. We use clips from Andrew Huberman, who allows this to be done on YouTube. He's just has some really great shows on science. And we're getting a little low on time. If I can go ahead and show a quick 3-minute clip. Sure. Let's do it. This is kind of, there's a lot of content. So let's
watch a summary of these effects of alcohol, basically, Doug, that persist even when you're not drinking.
If people are ingesting alcohol chronically, even if it's not every night, there are well-recognized changes in neural circuits, there are well-recognized changes in neurochemistry within the brain, and there are well-recognized changes in the brain-to-body stress system that generally point in 3 directions. Increased stress when people are not drinking, diminished mood and feelings of well-being when people are not drinking, and, as you'll soon learn, changes in the neural circuitry that cause people to want to drink even more in order to get just back to baseline, or the place that they were in terms of their stress modulation and in terms of their feelings of mood before they ever started drinking in the first place.
So to reiterate the high points from Dr. Huberman's podcast, for me it boiled down to 4 things to watch out for with alcohol, especially if you're this chronic drinker. So you're drinking between 7 and 14 a week, which is really a lot of people we know. It could be 1 drink a night, it could be just 3 or 4 drinks on Saturday and Sunday night, whatever it is, if you're averaging 7 a week. And so there's 4 high points again for me, and this is all besides, the drinking way too much and driving impaired, killing people, killing yourself, all those other things. This is aside from that. So the following items persist, and here's the key: even when you're not drinking, in between those periods of time you were drinking your wine or your can of beer or whatever. So 1, you have reduced inhibition, so you're less tactful. You have more impulsive behavior when you're not drinking. Diminished baseline of serotonin, which means your mood is slightly worse when not drinking. And so you basically pay the piper later. You have increased baseline of cortisol, which impacts our stress level. It's a hormone that God designed to help us deal with stress. When you're not drinking, you'll have increased level of stress and anxiety. Again, pay the piper later. And then finally, 4, he went into the destruction of good bacteria in your gut. And this is even if you have just 1 beer on the weekend. So even if you're just a very low to moderate drinker, you're going to kill the good bacteria in your gut. And you're going to allow a mechanism where allows some of the bad bacteria to get into your system. So these were the 4 points, the highlights of that last show we did that I'd encourage people to go back and watch if you haven't had a chance. But that's kind of a summary of some of the eye-opening things that alcohol do after you've had your beer, and then you're at work the next day, the day after, and the day after, and you have slightly elevated levels of mood, stress, things like that. And then then you maybe have your beer later because you want to relieve the stress, and maybe you're down or whatever, your mood, and you want to feel happy. Well, guess what? You're going to pay the piper later.
Okay, so again, those were some of my favorite shows. I spent a lot of time researching them, and a lot more science if you go back and watch them. Really good content, and I love, Doug is such a Bible student. He really is. He's one of the smartest guys I know at the Bible, and lots of great insight in this part 2 of that show where we get into what does the Bible say about alcohol, and you can go and watch that show and see. So we did a special episode of Real Science Radio after the Trump assassination, so we pushed out our schedule so that we could get this show in. I am going to, let's see, it's 8:24. This clip is about a minute. I can skip it, or is it? Do it. Do it? Okay. It's got a tease at the end anyways. You might not like it because you'll be mad I didn't give my answer, but you can ask me in the Q&A.
Got right into the question of conspiracy. First of all, on conspiracy theories, I really don't want to give any lip service to this whole idea that Trump staged this for a photo op. I mean, that's got to be as ridiculous and ludicrous as it comes.
Yeah.
Many on the right, on the other hand, they're claiming it's an inside job. So I want to play a clip by Candace Owens, and I like her. We agree on a lot of stuff. She's out there and she's vocal and she's brave and takes on difficult topics. But on this particular issue, I'm convinced she's wrong. She's convinced she's right. So let's play this clip.
You're telling me this guy was able to walk up with a rifle in his hand and scale a roof, and you don't think the Secret Service And let me tell you, they get there days before. Let me tell you how a security apparatus is supposed to run. Days before, they get in and they look at every possible angle in which somebody could hurt the president, okay? And I'm not even talking about once you get to the Secret Service. I'm talking about if you just have security in general. Before you speak, they will go, hey, this is the stage? Okay, let me tell you. That right there is a problem. They'll mark that as a spot. That right there is a problem. That part, we need to know who this person is. They'll knock on doors, okay? They got to figure out every possible angle that any individual could potentially get on a roof, because you know what? This has happened in the past. People have been shot from roofs. People have been shot from windows. There was a 0% chance that some random person with a rifle was able to scale a roof.
Doug, she says there's 0% chance that this isn't an inside job. That's a bridge too far. I'm on the opposite side of that, and I'm going to make a case here for our audience and see what they think. So,
okay. Have to watch the rest to get that. Okay.
That's cruel.
Okay, so we're at the end of the show. I want to just mention some people. Nicole McBurney does a lot of work with Real Science Radio. She's on the research and planning team, and she was the one who did.
Watch your own.
Okay, and she was the one who did the street interviews at the homeschool conference. Of course, Ryan Williams, my son, he's a guest host occasionally, and he does Creation magazines whenever we can go through those, and then he's done street interviews. We have more planned. Dominic Inyard, he's pretty much the head honcho, the executive producer. Jamie Schofield is has years of experience in radio and audio editing, and we're blessed to have him as part of the team. And so whenever you hear the radio broadcast, it's gone through an extra layer of expertise, and he's been doing this for years, and he's just fantastic at it. Joe Spears is such a great person on our research and planning team. He has so many great ideas, and I think at least we've got one of the Shamlins here. So Simon provides great insights, and he's from the younger generation and provides really good ideas for shows, along with his brother Scott. Daniel Hedrick, you saw him as an RSR guest host, and he also provides input and ideas for upcoming shows. And of course, our numerous audience members, we get feedback, emails, etc., and get even more ideas to help the show and come up with ideas of what to do. And in fact, that video you saw, that short from that astronomy lady, was from one of our listeners. So a big shout out to them, and a big shout out to my co-host Doug McBurney. I'm so blessed to have him join Real Science Radio after Bob passed, and I think he does a fantastic job and really good balance. So, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, if you know how to use a QR code, you can just do that. And I've got them out on the back table, because this may not be as easy to use. So, and then the RSR store, we need funds to stay on the radio. They don't pay us, we have to pay the radio to be on air. And so that helps the overall ministry. I definitely encourage you to check out Inyard Theology that Dominic Inyard runs. He's up to 11,000 subscribers, or I think he may be close to 12,000. He's putting out great content. Real Science Radio, we just passed this last week 900,000 views. So that was encouraging. We've got almost 3,000 subscribers. We're trying to continue to build that, and that's part of why we're thankful that Rob allowed us to talk about our radio show. So, okay,
Your
so I think we're done.
blocking your QR code. Your picture-to-picture's blocking your QR code online.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we were kind of, well, thank you for that, though. I'm not sure what to do about that right now. We actually probably got to go to the widescreen, I'm thinking, right, for the Q&A. Let's see here. Okay. Did that switch over? Whoops. Well, you get to see the whole OBS thing here.
This is how the sausage is made.
So Nicole, do you know how to get that into full screen? Okay, well, we might just have to live, this is what they'll be seeing online, and so you guys kind of get the idea.
You are full screen.
So,
You're supposed to be online.
okay, perfect. Okay, so Q&A, any questions?
Okay, if you have a question, let me know, and I will run the mic around to you. And we'll be passing an offering plate as we do Q&A. So be looking for that coming around. So, who's got a question? All right. Well, if nobody's got a question, I've got one. Okay, Fred, you left us with this really serious cliffhanger at the end.
Okay.
So, my question is, let's hear your non-conspiracy theory.
Okay, so I'll try to do it as quick as I can. So I do believe, there's spiritual warfare, and there could be this easily an overlying mindset. So like when the Secret Service said that when they were asked for more detail by the Trump team, they said that they never asked that, they never denied it. I thought that was a lie from the beginning. That's just not true. And it turns out it wasn't true. What I'm talking about is, and what Candace Owens was saying, is somehow this guy was in cahoots with the Secret Service. Okay, so those kind of conspiracies are highly likely. So what I did on the show is I went through math. So basically, if you think about this, if the Secret Service is in on it, you need to have an agent who hates Trump and then somehow is in contact with this guy. So what are the odds of that? 1 in 100? And the fact that it was actually, I'm going to take this back. I got to back up a little bit here. When it turned out that the assassin was on a building that the Secret Service, and everybody agrees was the responsibility of the police, which was a bad choice, admittedly, it eliminates the Secret Service as part of the conspiracy. Can we agree to that? Only because they weren't protecting that building, someone else was. It makes it unlikely it was a Secret Service. Other than this overlying, we're not going to provide as much security for Trump, and some of them may have been thinking, and hopefully he'll get assassinated. So I'm not saying that. There's always this overlying thing that could be happening. What I'm talking about, was this guy who shot at Trump, was he in a conspiracy? Just like they think Lee Harvey Oswald was in a conspiracy to kill Kennedy with either the mob or George Bush or whoever. Okay, so if you can eliminate the Secret Service because they weren't responsible for that building and everybody admits it, that leaves it to the Butler police. So now you have to have one cop that hates Trump and would be in on this. So that's say it's 1 in 100, and we think we're being very generous because most cops are probably pro-Trump, but let's say it's 1 in 100. So now it can't be just one cop because there's a lot of them. So every time you put in another person involved in the conspiracy, mathematically that becomes 1 in 100 times 1 in 100. And so then if you add, now you've got video clips and you've got text messages from this guy that you get off the phone. The guy doing the forensics, I have a friend who does this type of forensics off the phones for the Thornton Police Department. He would have to be in on it by hiding any text this guy may be getting from whoever. So my point is the odds continually stack up to make it virtually impossible that it was an inside job, and that's my position. I think it's highly unlikely that this guy who got a free shot off at the roof somehow was able to get up there because of a conspiracy to allow him to get up there. To me, it's mathematically the odds are just too low.
So you think it was a police oversight?
Yes, I think it was a calamity of errors. And I do think it was related to the Secret Service and someone in Washington not giving Trump more, they gave some more to Joe Biden. And so under the covers, there's a bit of a conspiracy, if you want to call it that, and I wouldn't. I'd just say there's this undercurrent, this tone, this thought process that's anti-Trump in the government that can help create a situation like this. I'm more focusing on this guy who shot shot the bullet. I don't think he was involved in any kind of conspiracy. I think it was a calamity of errors by the police.
Okay, so I don't want to get massively political, but whether people like Trump or not, that's not what I'm concerned about here.
Yeah.
My big question when I heard about that was, something's wrong with our Secret Service, because if somebody can get up there and shoot at a presidential candidate, who's to say somebody can't just shoot whoever that's in a high position? I mean, to me, I would question our Secret Service overall.
Oh, I do agree with that. I question them. They made drastic mistakes without question, but where that guy got on the building, it was assigned the Butler Police Department. They shouldn't have done that, but everybody agrees that it was the Butler Police Department that was responsible for that building, and they shouldn't have been. And in fact, I don't know if you heard that it was too hot outside, so they were staying inside the building. There are so many things that went wrong to allow this to happen, but the climate the Secret Service created was not good for protecting Trump, no doubt about it. And I do have some familiarity with the Secret Service. My cousin guarded Reagan, and my uncle was really good. What's that?
Who also got shot?
He got shot, and it was his best friend who took the bullet. Yeah, so Richard was supposed to be on that assignment. I have all kinds of interesting stories about that, but yeah. Secret Service dropped the ball, there's no question about it. They deserve the blame, they're ultimately responsible. But the question on that Candace Owens is saying is that this shooter was in cahoots with the government or somebody, and I don't support that narrative. I don't think it's mathematically it's highly unlikely. Conspiracies are really hard to pull off like that, because each person you add to the conspiracy, you're adding the odds that it's not the truth. So, we got a question back here?
Yeah, I'm asking this question just as a Real Science Radio listener. What do you think, besides just shows you want to do every Friday, people you want to have on, what do you think is like the future for Real Science Radio? Like, you added a YouTube channel recently. I think that's substantial, but what is some, I guess, long-term goals you have for Real Science Radio?
Yeah, the longest term goal, and I guess the overriding goal, is to bring about the fullness of the Gentiles. I feel like that's a pretty good goal, because we all get to get out of here. So we want to reach as many people as we can that can be saved. And we think the best way to do it for our ministry and for Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship is, a lot of people doubt, and I know I'm preaching to the choir to quite a few people here. A lot of people's doubts are because they think evolution is true, millions of years is true, so they have no foundation, and so they don't even want to hear the gospel. A lot of times it's hard to even talk about Christ to people who believe in evolution of millions of years. So we're trying to remove that bridge and try to reach people through science and showing them the problems with evolution. So to your question, long-term goals, a lot of the people who are deceived, we made a big mistake when we removed God from the schools, and I would argue we made a big mistake when we allowed public schools, period, but that's another topic. So we're trying to reach that generation that you're seeing today. You're seeing the generation. Delta Airlines yesterday said they're no longer going to broadcast ladies and gentlemen. It's too offensive. That's the generation we're dealing with. So Real Science Radio, one of the things we want to do is we're going to continue to try to bring on great guests, but we're also going to do shorts, these YouTube quick shorts, because we can also put them on Instagram and TikTok in ways that people are watching these young people are watching these and planting seeds so that maybe get some people to think about what they're believing, because they're being told lies. As you saw from Dr. Carl Werner, there's all kinds of lies about Lucy, Nebraska Man. He's got over 200 more on different ape men. So we want to bring about the fullness of the Gentiles, and Simon, thank you for all what you've done for us. And we want to continue to bring on engaging and interesting guests to get, to build the channel so more people can see the science that supports creation. And I would ask, if you have interest in being on our production team, please let me know. We'd be thrilled to have you. We try to get ideas from different people, and we get great comments from and suggestions from our listening audience. If you want to be on that production team, please meet me afterwards. Yeah.
Hey, so I got a question. I love what you said earlier about, okay, are you sure you're not in the conspiracy with the GPS thing? And I just, flat Earth, I'm pretty sure that the eclipses would look a little different, especially the lunars, but
Yeah.
that said, here's the thing, and Real Science Radio does a fabulous job of reaching people, but beyond that, we're all supposed to be apostles in this. In your view, how can others, how can the people you reach someone else? Or how do you see it actually in real life? Have you seen where what you send out grows and grows the same way the apostles did in the first century?
Yeah, what a great question. Well, it's guys like you giving talks at your class. You've been doing great work with presentations. We encourage other people to do that. If that's not your wheelhouse, try to find some other way to get the truth out to people. Maybe if you're younger, you know how to do shorts, post things on TikTok. There's so many different avenues you can take to try to reach people, and just having conversations at work, wherever you are, with friends, with family. People who are tied into evolution of millions of years, they're more interested in talking about science. You'll more easily get them engaged on science than you will the gospel, but you need to, once you plant that foundation, then you need to present the gospel. You can't leave that out. So we in a Real Science Radio, we try to make sure that we do that as you saw like on our Man on the Street interviews with Nicole, you present the gospel after providing the foundation. But we just need people that listen to us. Start your own YouTube channel, whatever it takes. Try to learn enough to give a talk to middle schoolers. You've got great presentations. People, and I know you're the type that would let others use those. We need that type of stuff to reach different people. And the hardest place to do right now is the churches, unfortunately. We got to find a way to get more into the churches. And our recent interview with Jerry Bergman, he gets into that. So he answers part of your question too. So Jerry Bergman was on the last 2 weeks of Real Science Radio, and you can watch the full video, 1 hour video. It was our last show. So.
Going back to your answer to the previous question, it occurred to me that one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx writes it as free education for all, which is not even a stone's throw from public education. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to the question like which document supports public schools, and you can say, is it the Constitution, the Magna Carta? No, it's the Communist Manifesto. The Bible? No. The Communist Manifesto is what promotes, that wants you to have free public education. Yes?
Kind of on that note, are you having any censorship issues? Anybody kind of monitoring you or harassing you?
That's a great question. So, so far, there's certain things you can't say. Like I said tranny once. and my producer, Dominic Inyart, when he was in the studio, before he switched to a podcast, he's like, hey, you guys gotta bleep that out, because YouTube will for sure censor your video. So there's things like that we have to be careful of. The other thing we have to be careful of, and it partly makes sense, is if we mention the word election, then our video doesn't see as much exposure. We'll have fewer views on it. And so we try to, we're aware of the various things that YouTube is doing. Right now it's not as bad as you think. Some people, because YouTube is run by the world, but it's not yet is it that bad. The censorship isn't terrible as long as you're careful with what you say that isn't, you just can't push the limit. We talk about climate change, and what they do on climate change is they let the video go, and we've gotten good views on it, but they'll put a disclaimer at the bottom about how climate change is real, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, they'll censor the video completely. And by the way, they do completely censor any talks on vaccines. Our video got booted off. That's the one video that we had expelled from YouTube, so we posted it on Rumble. So if you question the validity of the vaccine, they will toss you for that one. So censorship is happening, but it's not severe yet. And when it gets to that point, then I will be moving to Rumble.
Okay, well, it is getting late, so we probably ought to finish the Q&A. I do have one more question.
Sure.
Fred. This was when Kevin Lee was talking, so you'll have to get into his mind and see. But, when the Bible uses words, we often mistake them for figures of speech. And when you dig a little deeper, you find out they're not. That there's actually something more to it than just simply a figure of speech. And so my question is, what do you think he means by the windows of heaven? It seems like there may be more to that than just simply the water coming up out of the hydroplate fissures and just falling back on the earth.
Good question, and that one I can't really tap into his mind if he's suggesting. I know he's not suggesting anything like there was a canopy that broke. So that's a good question. He would love to answer it. I could give you his email and he'd answer you right away. Actually, okay. He's real easy to get a hold of. So I just know what he believes as far as hydroplate theory, and that all this material that came up out of the fountains of the great deep achieved escape velocity. And hence why you have Earth rocks on the moon, as reported by NASA. NASA said, oh, by the way, these rocks came from 20 miles beneath the Earth's surface. That sounds familiar. From a watery environment. NASA works for Walt Brown. Yes. So anyways.
It's about time.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well then,
one last thing. So outside on the table, you can get the web address for the YouTube channel, and maybe, if you can, just subscribe to the channel. It does help us, and hopefully you enjoy the content there. And there's also books there. If you're interested in a book and you can't afford it, go ahead and take it. We ask for a donation sometime down the road. Just give the donation to Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship. But please, the Carl Werner DVDs, you can't have those. You have to pay $30 each for those. That's their ministry's position on that. So we have 4 of his DVDs, so please, if you decide you want one, that one you do have to pay for. Otherwise, we've got a book on plate tectonics, 20 reasons to question plate tectonics, and we're going to start talking more about plasma cosmology, which does away with dark matter, dark energy, black holes, and explains distant starlight better than we think current theories do. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming along with plasma cosmology. Doesn't require a Big Bang.
So do you have a suggested donation for any of the books or materials?
For the plasma and the plate tectonics, $10 would be great.
So the Carl Werner
is $30 each.
Are $30. Other than that, let's say a $10 donation?
Sure.
Okay. All righty. So thank you, Fred. That was great. Very interesting. So thank you. Okay, now the time that I know that you all have all been just really sitting on the edge of your chair waiting for announcements. So let's see. We actually don't have too many announcements this time around. September 13th, we will have Dr. Thomas Kendall speaking. And I hear from a nearby source that he is a phenomenal speaker, phenomenally interesting. I have actually spoken with him myself. He's a very bright person. He will be speaking on amber and the fact that that what they did with amber in Jurassic Park really doesn't work. In fact, the amber just pretty much does the opposite. If there's water and there's other materials inside the amber that actually breaks down the DNA, and I hope I didn't steal his thunder, but this would be a phenomenally interesting talk. The interesting thing about this is that his talk will come right on the heels, a day later, from our Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship annual visit to Dinosaur Ridge. We will be running the Dinosaur Ridge tour again on Thursday, September 12th. And if you would be interested in going on that tour, I have a pile of information sheets in the back. They look like this. I'm sure you can read that all from here, from where you are. Just trust me, there's a pile of these sheets. You can get all the information you need for that tour. If you want to go ahead and sign up for it, we have sign-up sheets back there also, so you can sign up to go on the tour. And you put your information on there, we will process it and enter it into the database as if you had emailed it in. There's also a sign-up sheet back there if you would like to assist with that tour. We actually need some tour guides, some people to stand on Dinosaur Ridge for 8 hours during the day in this hot sun and stand there and talk to people when they come by and keep a smile on your face. So, and also have a lot of really good information memorized. So, so if you would like to sign up for that, please do so. There is a separate sign up that says volunteers sign up sheet. Yes, Ken?
You know, if you had twice as many as you think you need to sign up, you'd only be out there for like 5 hours instead of 10 hours.
That is a very interesting piece of insight there. Question would be, are my organizational skills great enough in order to handle that idea? So, anyway.
You have a wife.
Okay, yes, this is true. Okay, so let's see. Next thing is, so RMCF came out with our first book last month. I had a few copies of it out there. Unfortunately, it's all sold out, so we don't have any more. I'm hoping to have some more in September. So if you wanted a copy of A Tale of Two Theories, then possibly you'll be able to get it at the next meeting. So, sorry about that. Finally, we have food and drink and fellowship in the back. Actually, you can have fellowship anywhere you want, but the food and drink's in back. So, with that, let us go ahead and adjourn, and thank you all for coming. Appreciate seeing you all, and we will see you next month or at Dinosaur Ridge.